Russian President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine has been raging for over 3 years. From the beginning, part of Putin's strategy has been clear: send so many tanks into Ukraine that his enemy gets overwhelmed. That strategy hasn't worked as well as Putin would have liked. Ukraine has found plenty of counters to his tanks, especially with its ever-growing army of drones. But NATO, and especially Germany, has been paying attention to Putin's tactics. Now, Germany is getting ready to fight fire with fire. This one move will allow Germany to steamroll Russia if Putin tries to deploy its tanks in Europe. What is that move? Germany is gearing up to build 3,500 tanks and armored vehicles of its own. That's according to Bloomberg, which reported on July 4 that people familiar with Germany's armed forces have reported that the country is planning to buy around 1,000 main battle tanks and up to 2,500 armored fighting vehicles. The move is being made as Germany works alongside NATO to prepare for a potential invasion of a NATO member, likely one of the Baltic states, in the coming years. Germany thinks that the invasion is coming soon. In June, the country's chief of defense, Carsten Breuer, told the BBC that NATO faces a very serious threat from Russia, the likes of which hasn't been seen in 4 decades of military service. There's an intent and there's a build-up of the stocks, Breuer said before delivering a stark warning. Russia may attack a NATO country before the decade is through. This is what the analysts are assessing in 2029, Breuer said. So we have to be ready by 2029. If you ask me now, is this a guarantee that's not earlier than 2029? I would say no, it's not. So we must be able to fight tonight. The anonymous sources who spoke to Bloomberg say the purchase will require a staggering $29 billion in funding. It's also being proposed with a purpose. NATO has asked Germany to provide it with 7 combat brigades over the next 10 years, all of which will likely serve in key border regions to act as a deterrent to Putin as Russia leader mulls over which nation to invade next. Those brigades will need equipment. Around 3,500 tanks and armored vehicles should do the job. Bloomberg sources also revealed precisely what Germany will be buying with its $29 billion. On the tank front, it's planning to purchase around 1,000 Leopard 2s. The Leopard 2 is one of the most impressive European tanks and is perfectly placed to serve as a direct counter to most of the main battle tanks Putin has fielded in Ukraine. The first version of the Leopard 2 was produced in 1979, says Army Technology, and it's gone through several iterations and upgrades since then. The most recent of these upgrades, and likely the version of the Leopard 2 that Germany will buy, is the A7 Plus main battle tank. Built by Krauss Maffei Wegmann, or KMW, the A7 Plus weighs over 148,000 pounds, measures nearly 36 feet long, and is capable of tearing across terrain at speeds approaching 45 miles per hour. It's an improvement over the Leopard 2, Army Technology says, because it introduces digitized technology to the tank and was designed with a multifunctional user concept that's supposed to improve sustainability. Examples come from the tank's turret and chassis, both of which are fitted with cooling systems to ensure the tank's degradation due to overheating is slowed down. New air conditioning and high-performance power supply systems have also been built into the tank, making the A7 Plus one of the most modern tanks Germany is capable of fielding. It also hits hard, very hard. A Leopard 2 A7 Plus is loaded with an FLW-200 modular remote-controlled light weapon system that allows it to defend itself from several types of targets, in addition to making it a terrifying offensive force. That system allows the tank to automatically detect both allied and enemy vehicles closing in, with its turret also having an elevation angle that descends to -15 degrees and ascends to 70 degrees. Every A7 Plus comes with a 120mm L55/L44 smoothbore gun that's capable of firing standard NATO ammunition. But if the tank needs to pack some major firepower, that gun can also fire programmable 120mm high explosive rounds capable of decimating a target. An integrated 7.62mm machine gun, controlled by a gunner, adds to the tank's offensive lineup. Plus, it can be equipped with either a .5 caliber machine gun or a 40mm grenade launcher, depending on the mission objective. Defensively, the A7 Plus has smoke grenade launchers built into either side of its weapon station, which it can rattle off whenever the operators need to conceal the tank's position. The tank also comes with a modular protection kit, which is supposed to protect it from mines, anti-tank missiles, rocket-propelled grenades, and improvised explosive devices. The A7 Plus can also be fitted with a mine plow, dozer blade, or mine roller, all of which can be used to clear away mines or other obstacles placed in its path to slow it down. It's an incredibly powerful tank, and Germany may be gearing up to buy 1,000 of them. As for the 2,500 armoured vehicles that will be part of the purchase, Bloomberg says that all of them will be GTK Boxers. Those are just as impressive as the Leopard 2 A7 Plus in their own way. An 8x8 multi-role wheeled armoured vehicle, the Boxer comes in Armoured Personnel Carrier or APC and Infantry Fighting Vehicle or IFV varieties, according to Army recognition. The APC variant is the one that hits the hardest. The same resource says that a Boxer APC comes loaded with a remote weapon station that comes with either a 12.7mm machine gun or a 40mm grenade launcher. So it doesn't hit as hard as the Leopard 2 A7 Plus. But it's not supposed to. The Boxer is more of a supporting vehicle, at least on the offensive front, though its weapon system can still be configured based on the mission's needs. It takes less than an hour to switch the machine gun for the grenade launcher and vice versa. Far more impressive is the vehicle's sheer mobility. It has an 8V199 TE20 diesel engine that allows it to hit speeds of up to 65 miles per hour over a range of about 621 miles. That performance is achievable even on rough terrain and under extreme environmental conditions, Army recognition says. The Boxer's steel and ceramic armour offers protection against explosives, with Germany also having the option to equip it with active protection systems and reactive armour. In other words, the vehicle's defences are modular and can be adapted to suit its mission, much like its weapons system. As for crew, the Boxer can carry between 3 and 11 people, again, depending on if it's the APC or IFV variant. These two vehicles easily match almost anything Russia is capable of bringing to the table, and Germany is planning to buy 3,500 of them. However, planning is the key word here. The one caveat to this report, as both Bloomberg and the Kyiv Independent point out, is that Germany hasn't made an official decision yet. Bloomberg tried to speak to a German Defense Ministry spokesperson who refused to comment on any possible increase in vehicle numbers. As for the Kyiv Independent, it says that final quantities and pricing are still being negotiated, meaning the amount Germany spends and the number of vehicles it gets may change. Still, even without official confirmation, the world is already reacting. Bloomberg says that shares in the German defense manufacturer Rheinmetall were up by as much as 3.7% after the news of Germany's plans broke, suggesting those in the know in Germany's financial circles believe that an official announcement is coming and want to get in on the ground floor before Rheinmetall's share prices skyrocket. And there's more. In addition to these 3,500 vehicles, Germany is also preparing to buy up to 1,000 Patria armoured modular vehicles. Manufactured in Finland, these vehicles are intended to replace the Fuchs AFVs in Germany's military, which are aging out and won't prove effective in a future war effort. Nordic Defence Review says that Germany has already received approval for this purchase, meaning Patria, which manufacture the vehicle as well as giving its name, will start delivering the first of the proposed 1,000 in 2025. The Patria is a little smaller than the Boxers Germany is reportedly planning to buy, as it's a 6x6 vehicle. Still, assuming both deals go through, that pulls Germany's new military vehicle count up to 4,500 to be delivered in the coming years. Putin will be shaking in his boots, and he should be. After all, the only reason that Germany is making these purchases at all is because Putin decided to invade Ukraine in February 2022. It's that decision that's prompted Germany to reinvent itself as a military nation. The news of the country's $29 billion investment into tanks and armoured vehicles comes in the wake of a June pledge by the country to increase its defence spending to 3.5% of its gross domestic product or GDP by 2029. According to Defence News, Germany also intends to plough a staggering $761 billion into its military between now and 2030, making it comfortably the world's fourth largest military spender behind the US, China and Russia. And it's Russia that is Germany's key concern. After all, it's Russia that Germany intends to counter, which leads to the reason why Germany is buying 3,500 tanks and armoured vehicles right now. Those reasons start with something that Germany hasn't been all too willing to admit for several years. Germany isn't ready for a fight against Russia. At least, it hasn't been for years on the equipment front after decades of neglecting investment into its defences. This is evident in the lack of commitment in Germany's past defence spending. According to the World Bank, the last time Germany spent 2% of its GDP on its military was in 1991, which is the same year that the Soviet Union collapsed. Ever since then, and up until the last couple of years, the country's defence spending has been in constant decline. It reached a historic low point in 2005 when Germany only spent 1.1% of its GDP on defence. But even once the Ukraine war started in earnest, the country wasn't spending much. 2022 saw Germany invest 1.4% of its GDP into its military, with 2023 bringing with it a 1.5% investment. Bear in mind that, until a June announcement that it'll raise its recommendation to 5%, NATO's recommended GDP spending was 2% for all of its members. Germany has been neglecting its military for far too long. That may be changing now. However, these decades of neglect hurt the country's wartime readiness. That much was clear way back in February 2018, when the UK Defence Journal reported on a leaked document revealing that Germany was severely under-equipped to deal with Russia. That document was leaked at a time when Germany was set to take on a role as the leader of NATO's Very High Readiness Joint Task Force, or VJTF, which had a clear focus on Russia, and the document made one thing very clear. Germany doesn't have enough tanks. The document revealed that Germany's 9th Tank Brigade only had 9 operational Leopard 2s at the time, though it had promised it would have 44 ready by the time it took over the VJTF. That brigade also only had 3 of the 14 armoured vehicles Germany had promised. The reason for these shortfalls, according to the document, wasn't just because Germany wasn't buying enough tanks and armoured vehicles, it also couldn't maintain the ones it had. The country's paltry military budget, at least in comparison to its GDP, apparently didn't stretch to the parts required for maintenance. Germany also didn't seem willing to invest money or time into the people needed to keep these types of vehicles in good condition. The result was a crumbling stockpile of tanks and armoured vehicles that made Germany something of a laughingstock. Many have reported on Putin's reliance on Soviet-era tanks during his war with Ukraine. But Germany was in no better position. If it had to fight, it would be pulling from equally decrepit stockpiles. Bruegel went further with its own analysis 6 years later. By 2021, Germany only had around 340 tanks. That's just 8% of the 4,000 it had in 1992 and 14% of the 2,400 it had in 2004. In other words, Germany wasn't just failing to maintain its tank stockpiles, it was actively depleting them, all in aid of slashing its military budget as much as possible. And this was a trend seen throughout the German military, Bruegel points out. Germany had 3,000 howitzers in 1992. That went down to just 120 in 2021. It also slashed its stockpiles of fighter jets by 50% between 1992 and 2021. The point here is that Germany has spent the last 3 decades disarming itself. That would have had Putin licking his lips. Germany is among Europe's richest countries. The fact that it was spending so little on its military created an opportunity for Putin. It's an opportunity he hasn't taken, but it was there nonetheless. If everything had gone to Putin's plan, he would have taken Ukraine in less than a week, granting him a huge patch of territory with which to threaten Europe. Smaller Baltic nations such as Estonia and Latvia might have been next, with Russia's leader believing that NATO wouldn't be able to respond. After all, it was Germany that was supposed to be leading the charge. How could it do that when it was spending so little on its military? Now, a turnaround is taking shape. After Putin's initial plans failed, the sleeping giant of Europe was stirred from its slumber. It took a while for Germany to wake up. It hit the snooze button several times first, as shown by its low spending as a proportion of GDP in 2022 and 2023. But the alarm has finally gone off, and Germany is investing heavily. Around 1,000 tanks and 2,500 armoured vehicles, 3,500 if counting the Patrias, are just symptoms of this sleeping giant awakening. But there are other reasons why Germany has chosen now to buy so many tanks and armoured vehicles. Its previously mentioned NATO commitments rank up there. As addressed earlier, NATO has asked Germany to provide 7 new brigades, which amounts to around 40,000 new troops. That request was made in May, according to the Business Standard, and it's part of a larger push within NATO to hike up the number of brigades it requires its members to provide. That number was previously 80, according to an anonymous senior military figure Business Insider quoted. Now, NATO is looking to its members to provide between 120 and 130 brigades, around a 50% increase over the past figures. The 7 new German brigades add to the 10 the country committed to NATO back in 2021. Germany hasn't delivered all of those 10 yet. It has a deadline of 2030 and has set up 8 so far, with a 9th currently being built in Lithuania that will be ready for 2027. Add these 10 brigades to the 7 more that NATO has requested, and that's 17. With each brigade having around 5,000 troops, that adds up to a commitment of 85,000 soldiers. All of those soldiers need equipment and armour. Perhaps Germany buying 3,500 tanks and armoured fighting vehicles is part of an effort to ensure those brigades are ready to act if and when the time comes for a war with Russia. And speaking of war with Russia, that leads to another reason why Germany is investing so heavily in this specific type of equipment. It wants to be capable of fighting fire with fire in a war with Putin's forces. Putin has relied heavily on tanks in his Ukraine invasion, as the national interest bled in April 2024. The war in Ukraine proves tanks are here to stay and fight. And it isn't wrong, though Ukraine has found adequate counters to Russia's tanks with its kamikaze drones and anti-tank missiles, neither has been enough to cause Putin to withdraw his main battle tanks from the field. However, it's hard to ignore the fact that tanks were crucial to the early gains Russia made during its initial invasion. It's also worth noting that Ukraine has made heavy use of tanks and armoured vehicles too. They've enabled Ukraine to defend against Russia's tanks, as well as launch counter-offensives against Russian forces in occupied territory. The tank may have been seen as an outdated weapon before the Ukraine war. The national interest points out that many in the West certainly ascribe to that view, with most modern militaries focusing instead on building up strong air forces. But what seems to make sense in modern warfare and what Putin is doing are two very different things. Tanks are still central to Putin's strategy. If any evidence were needed, Bulgarian military reports that Russia plans to build another 1,000 tanks by 2028 and 3,000 by 2035. Military Watch magazine echoes this claim, adding that Putin is now pushing to hit the same sorts of tank production figures seen during the heyday of the Soviet Union, when Russia was producing around 4,000 tanks per year. Whether Russia is actually capable of hitting these numbers when under the weight of Western sanctions is irrelevant. What matters here is the plan. With it, Putin is telling the rest of the world that any future war he wages, along with the ongoing fight with Ukraine, will still involve tanks. A lot of them if Russia's leader has his way. Germany's planned investment into 1,000 tanks and 2,500 armoured vehicles is likely intended to be a direct counter to the strategy Putin is practically telling NATO he's going to use in the future. And if Russia plans to bring thousands of tanks to a fight, Germany intends to be ready with plenty of tanks of its own. In reality, Russia's plans to build thousands more tanks may be more than a little unrealistic. The reality Putin faces is that as Germany gears up to buy more modern tanks, he's desperate enough to be sending 60-year-old tanks into Ukraine. Find out more, along with what this means for Russia's tank situation, in our video. And remember to subscribe to the Military Show for commentary on the key military developments in Europe.